Hey everybody, Brian Von VA here, back at it again with another set of D&D stories. Today we're going to be talking about disabled character stories in D&D. If you have one to share, please do so in the comments below. I'm playing a neutral evil Githzerai artificer named Ceralian at the moment, who is missing his right arm. He had his arm cut off after he unknowingly stole something that belonged to the wizard god king who rules the Githzerai. I really hope I'm pronouncing that right, because I don't think I've heard of that before. He was put in his city, being lost to the chaos of Limbo for imprisonment. There was a Gith anarch trying to keep the city alive who used a prosthetic for his right arm, and my character would eventually steal the arm and luckily escape through a portal that randomly opened in the chaos that brought him to Neverwinter. Here's a fun fact about his arm. The consciousness of a forgotten evil Gith god is in his arm, and the Anarch has just enough of a wisdom score to always pass saves and keep the god from possessing him. My character could fail, however, and fail he did. There was a while where I was with my party as a Gith god who wanted to genocide and subjugate the two races that forgot him. All the god needed was to get stronger by walking around and doing things in the material plane for a while. After he learned the Anarch, who could now fail wisdom saves against him, was on his way, the god allowed Ceralian to have control of his body once again. He knew Ceralian would willingly give it back after that. That night, my character would awaken and pull the prosthetic off. He took more than half of his hit points in psychic damage and let out a scream that everyone in the party could hear. They came in to see the arm off and Ceralian lying there on the floor. The arm would do the psychic damage to anyone who touched it at this point, so our wizard and Ceralian used their mage hands to pick up the arm and put it in a blanket. Ceralian stored the arm in a compartment on his steel defender, which was a hovering manta ray construct. He went a few days without the arm, meaning a lower AC since he could no longer hold a shield, he could no longer translate all languages, he also couldn't cast Revivify, all of which the arm let him do. When he got back to town, he built himself a new arm. He couldn't read all languages or cast Revivify, but his new arm does give him 2 sorcery points, swapped out the Eldritch Adept feat for the Meta Magic Expert feat. Now here's the best part. Ceralian now has some of the knowledge of a god of creation has. This has been my favorite character I've played, and I can't wait to see how his story in this campaign ends. Everything points towards him giving the arm back and joining a faction another PC is restarting from their backstory called the Wayfarers. If that happens, I'll get to use Ceralian and any PC who joins as an NPC in the homebrew pirate campaign I'm running after this one concludes. Sounds like fun. Addiction is a fantastic expression of psychological disability that can be brought into Dungeons & Dragons, as a chemical addiction can have physical effects and create a story arc through withdrawal and abuse, while a psychological addiction can lead to hijinks and personal development. Both come more easily to characters suffering from trauma or mental illness, and it's important to remember these things are also forms of disability. This is true. I once had a tiefling who was trying very hard to get in with the 9 hells instead of blend in with common mortals. Rejection by 2 cultures and attempting to prove himself put him under such stress that drugs were an obvious crutch. Thanks to his chemical abuse, he ended up being the character who might accidentally find a puzzle solution 1 minute only to sit down in a trapped chair full of poison needles another, with the party expressing frustration at the need to take care of him when he made horrible drug-induced errors in judgment. It became evident that it all stemmed from him devaluing his own life and being deeply depressed over his lack of inclusion, making the careless choices with a subconscious hope he'd step on that one trap that took his head off of his shoulders. From a gameplay standpoint, this meant that many of the traps and triggers that the players avoid would get tripped. Treasures would be uncovered by a stumbling blunder. Meanwhile, the players found themselves playing the characters who hang out with the funny addict and then realize it's not so funny, and the session started having some very special episode moments, confronting him and his issues. Hey, if you're listening to this in June, It is National Men's Health Awareness Month in the States. Check in on your guys out there, everybody. I had played in a campaign that was inspired by Final Fantasy, which included many classes and races and such. I didn't play in this game long due to family shenanigans, but the few sessions I attended were memorable to me because of this character. I was playing a red mage, which I think was a blaster caster named Raymond Clark. He specialized in fire magic and naturally was a hothead. In the process of making this character, rolling for stats was, interesting. I had been rolling very well, getting an 18, 2 16s, and 2 14s. Ho-ho, nice! I was feeling very optimistic about this lady until the final roll of my D6s. 4 natural ones. Using the drop, the lowest didn't matter here. So I was stuck with a 3 that I had to use because I was digging my other rolls. So I had a tough choice ahead of me, but I found an interesting way of implementing it into the character. You see, Raymond now had a 3 in strength, and so I decided to pull a Mr. Glass on him. Ooh, clever. For those who haven't seen the Unbreakable trilogy, great movies, all of them, Mr. Glass was a character played by Samuel L. Jackson. That had glass-like bones. If stubbed a toe, the bone in his toe would shatter. Not break, but shatter. So I used this same concept for Raymond. Now, you could argue that this could also be a low constitution thing, but I was a caster. I didn't need strength anyway. Also, if I had a 14 strength, having a big carrying capacity would make no sense if his bones broke easily. Picking up his heavy bag would spell disaster for him. The glass bone dilemma came up a few times during a couple games. The first incident was in a tavern where an NPC in a rival party had tripped Raymond over, gloating that his group completed a quest before them an hour prior. The DM asked for a dex save, which I failed by rolling a 3 or something, and Raymond falls hard on his arm. This drops Raymond's max HP by a good chunk, and the cleric has to spend the majority of the night getting it set on track to heal up very nicely. Another time, the party was retreating from an orc tribe that had been raiding a nearby fishing village. There were far too many, and instead of fighting through the few of them blocking the main road leading away from the village, we cut through buildings heading inland. Little did we know, as we had come in by rowboat, that the side of the village we were going through was built on stilts due to being in a swampy area. So as we cut through buildings and went across walkways, the town came to an abrupt stop at a balcony about 15 feet up, which drops directly into the swamp below. 15 feet is a point where you'd normally deal with minor fall damage, but the DM ruled that bludgeoning damage would give my character problems due to his bones. And what kind of damage does fall damage do? Bludgeoning. That's what. So I'm worried, because if Raymond goes to jump, he would definitely become immobile or dead depending on how he lands. And I definitely didn't want to engage the orcs in melee either, so he nervously contemplates as the other party members bite a little bit of dust as they drop down, and they claim they can catch me. And after a look back, seeing orcs with clubs and axes, and decided to trust his companions. And the rogue, yes, the Roger was the only team player here, failed his roll to catch Raymond. And he falls horizontally on his front, which puts him in death saves instantly. And to make a long story short, the party dips and Raymond is captured, rather than killed. But his injuries kill him eventually, and I roll up a new character. I've never been so happy to see a max roll of 14 and a minimum of 7 before. Now, of course, this may not have exactly been a disability in the thread's intended sense, but I figured I'd share anyways. Good character concept, by the way. I really liked it. I once played with an autistic girl who played a blind tiefling fighter. The player was so sweet. She loved the book Ferdinand, and when making her character, her sister was watching Avatar. She kind of mashed Ferdinand and Toph. The character fought with her horns and a silk scarf. She found the enemy by feeling the ground. When the character wasn't fighting, she wore the scarf around her eyes because the scent was comforting to her. Her character, who was called Baby, was raised in a poorhouse and she sold cabbages on the side of the road. People took advantage of her blindness, people gave her less money than she asked for, and she starved most of the time. Her father was desperate for money, so he sold her into a fighting ring, and she was cared for by a woman named Lulu, who gave her the scarf to make her look tough, but it slipped over her eyes, and it kind of became her thing. She learned to fight, but Lulu knew Baby didn't want to fight, so she helped her escape. She was caught and wound up in prison with her friend, who now guides and helps her. And again, they escape. To make money, they painted symbols on her and put her in a weird outfit and passed her off as a mystic, which is how they met their party. Baby was very helpful because she had empath abilities, and she could tell when attacks were coming because she had heightened senses. Later in the campaign, she acquired a Feyhound who acted as a steed, and a seeing eye dog who she named Specs. Oh, this is so wholesome! At the very end, she delivered the final blow to the big bad and was reunited with Lulu, who now lived on a farm. As far as we know, she lived the rest of her life with Lulu, Specs, and Wendell, helper friend, growing veggies, not cabbage, and playing in the fields, learning to dance and paint like she always wanted. Listen, cabbage, I get it. I understand it. There's a whole side story about why she hates cabbages now because of the past. I love Lulu. I love Baby. I love this whole character. I need to know more about it. If you're ever out there listening, please tell me. Hey everybody, Brian Von VA checking in after the vid. Make sure to leave a like, subscribe, ring that bell, and of course, if you'd like to tell us about a character that had a disability in one of your games, let me know, because I'd really like to understand what your thought process was when you saw them, created them, whatever, and what kind of problems they had to face. We love you all. Please be safe, happy, healthy, and we will see you soon. Bye for now.